So let's take a slow walk through the muscles of the anterior hip for starters. So the psoas major, that's this muscle here, the psoas is spelled P-S-O-A-S, so the P is silent, and it originates along the transverse process of the lumbar vertebra and inserts onto the lesser trochanter. So I'll pull it out so you can see what it looks like. So it's a powerful hip flexor. It also stabilizes the hip joint, along with a muscle here called the iliacus. So the iliacus can be injured in sprinters, and it's also a powerful hip flexor. So these two combined at the hip level are known as the iliopsoas, and that becomes important for ultrasound assessment later in your career. So these both insert onto the lesser trochanter of the femur, and the lesser trochanter is this little bone in here. Okay, moving on to, let's do this little muscle here, which is the pectineus. So the pectineus I included in the adductor group, but it's actually an anterior thigh muscle. The reason I included it in the adductor group is because it performs the action of adduction, but it is supplied by the femoral nerve. So also in the anterior thigh group is the sartorius. Now the sartorius used to be known as the tailor's muscle, because when someone sits with their hip externally rotated and their lateral leg placed up against the thigh of the contralateral leg, that's technically known as the position that tailors or sewers used to sit in when they were stitching up trousers. So that helps you remember the action. So it externally or laterally rotates the thigh. It helps to abduct the hip, and it also flexes the knee. Okay, and then I've just moved the TFL muscle off there. It's technically part of the anterior muscle group. So its full name is tensor fasciae latae, and it's only all three words. Tensor fasciae latae refers to the muscle part, not this tensor fascia, which is the long elongated fascial band. So tensor fasciae latae originates on this anterior superior iliac spine, and at its distal end it's inserting into the iliotibial tract. It abducts, which means take away, at the hip, and it also medially rotates, which means turns in, and flexes the thigh. So along with iliacus and psoas, it helps to flex the thigh. So it's actually a muscle you're not really supposed to use if you're walking properly and drawing your knee forward in a sprinting or running action. That is primarily supposed to be done by your gluteus minimus, which sits underneath. We'll come to those later, and also these powerful hip flexors. Okay, now let's move on to the quadriceps femoris group. So quad meaning four, and these are the muscles over here. So on the deeper layer are three with a very similar name. There's a vastus, V-A-S-T-U-S, vastus medialis, because it's on the medial side. And then this one's called the vastus lateralis. In between is vastus intermedialis. So think of it like running muscles. Fastest, to be the fastest, you have to use your vastus. Okay, so there's three vastus muscles. And then on top is the rectus femoris. So that's probably the most important of the quadriceps muscles. It's the most powerful extensor of the knee. So it also causes flexion of the hip, unlike the other vastus muscles. So the rectus femoris inserts onto the patellar ligament along with the other three vastus muscles, and they form the quadriceps femoris group. And in terms of their nerve supply, they're all supplied by the femoral nerve. So the femoral nerve supplies all the quadriceps group, the pectineus, the sartorius, and the iliacus. However, the psoas muscle, which was a little higher, is supplied by lumbar nerves. Okay, and that's all the anterior group that you'd need to know. So what we're going to look at now are the muscles that form the medial thigh. So these are the adductors of the thigh. Now I've included one in here, the pectineus, and the pectineus could technically be included in the anterior thigh as well, and it's the only one of this group that's supplied by a different nerve to the others. So it's supplied by the femoral nerve, whereas all of the adductors of the thigh are supplied by obturator nerve. So let's put them in place and you can see what they do. So here's the pectineus. It's the most superior of those inner groin muscles. And it becomes really relevant when we're looking for femoral hernias. So femoral hernias are located anterior to that muscle. Then deep to that is one called the obturator externus. And the obturator externus will steady the femur within the acetabulum. Then is your adductor brevis. So brevis meaning short. Adductor brevis is the highest of all the adductors. So it's inserting on the superior linea aspera of the femur. Then the adductor longus. Now this muscle is very important when it comes to ultrasound because it's probably one of the most commonly torn muscles in kicking sports, particularly things like soccer, where you're moving the leg across the body. So that adduction action commonly causes tears in adductor longus. So you can see it inserts further down the femur on the middle linea aspera. And then the most posterior and the largest of all the adductors is adductor magnus. Okay, so it inserts in the distal femur and on the adductor tubercle. And also included in the medial group of the thigh is this long, graceful, slender muscle called the gracilis. And the gracilis also helps to perform the action of adduction. So we're going to have a look at the posterior thigh muscles, or the hamstring group. And considering that we've just covered anterior and medial thigh, whatever the anterior thigh muscles performed, which was flexion at the hip, this posterior group are performing the opposite. So they're going to perform extension of the hip. And whatever they perform at the hip, they perform the opposite at the knee joint. So they cross or span two joints, the hip and the knee. They produce extension at the hip, or extension of the posterior thigh, and flexion of the leg. And leg implies lower leg. So if we remove the gluteus maximus muscle and zoom in, you can see a little bony landmark here, which is the ischial tuberosity. And the ischial tuberosity is the common origin for the hamstring muscle group. So the ischial tuberosity is the common origin, and there are various distal insertions. So let's start with the lateral hamstring. So the most lateral is the biceps femoris. Now bi implies two of something. So as the name implies, there's two heads. There's a long head and a short head. Now the long head, or the biceps femoris, together is the workhorse of the hamstrings. They both these heads insert on the lateral fibular head down here, and the long head is a protector of the sciatic nerve. So if we remove it, you can see the sciatic nerve laying beneath it. So the short head arises on the lower third of the linea aspera of the femur. You can see it in here, and also on the supracondylar ridge of the femur. And it's a slightly weaker muscle, and it only produces an action at one joint, which is the knee. It doesn't span the hip, so therefore it can't produce any extension at the hip. So if we now have a look at the medial side of the hamstrings, there's two. You've got the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus. So they have very similar names. The semitendinosus is the most superficial, or the most posterior of those two. The semimembranosus underlies it. So semitendinosus gets its name because of the long, slender tendon that's at the distal end of it. And the semimembranosus, it's broad, fat, and membranous, so that's where it gets its name from. So if you were to flex the knee and place your hand on the inner posterior thigh, and then bend your knee up towards your backside, and you can feel a strong, powerful set of tendons on the medial side of your popliteal fossa. That's the semitendinosus and semimembranosus. So let's have a look at their insertion sites. So the semimembranosus, firstly, that inserts on the posterior medial condyle of the tibia, and also reflects back across the posterior knee joint. Then the semitendinosus, it inserts on the medial, anterior and superior aspect of the tibia here. It also inserts into what we could equally name the pes anserinus. So pes anserinus translated means goosefoot. So if you have a look at these three tendons, they look like the three claws of a goosefoot. That's something that you do need to know. The pes anserine tendons, there's three of them. And they include the semitendinosus, the gracilis, which is part of the adductor or medial group of the thigh, and the sartorius, which is part of the anterior group of the thigh. And those three collectively known as the pes anserine tendons. So in terms of hamstrings, we know that they span two joints. They have the ability to produce extension of the thigh or extension of the hip and flexion of the leg or flexion of the knee. And if we have a look at their common origin site, I'm going to tell you something that applies to ultrasound. So the semitendinosus and the biceps femoris, they insert together on a fairly medial aspect of that ischial tuberosity. So the biceps femoris long head and the semitendinosus form what's known as the conjoint tendon. So it just means two things joined together. So that's the most common site for hamstring rupture or avulsion, so an acute injury during, say, a running activity. The semimembranosus inserts more laterally on the ischial tuberosity. So it becomes relevant later because when you start to scan these tendons, if you start by scanning the medial aspect of the knee, you'll be on the semimembranosus, and it's really large and fat. And the more proximal you move an ultrasound transducer, the thinner the muscle will become and the more lateral in situation. And it's good to know that the semimembranosus is underlying the semitendinosus. Okay, and the biceps femoris, which starts quite lateral, actually inserts more medially up the top on its origin, so here. And in terms of nerve supply, it's fairly simple to remember. So nearly all of them are supplied by the sciatic nerve, but we need to be more specific than that. So the sciatic nerve has two branches, one for each of the bones of the lower leg. So one's known as the tibial branch and one's known as the fibular branch. So the fibular branch is only going to supply the short head of the biceps, whereas the long head, the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus are all supplied by the tibial branch of the sciatic nerve, and that makes it nice and easy. So now just reviewing the gluteal region or the gluteal compartment. There's a superficial layer that consists of three gluteal muscles which have been removed here, and these all originate along the ilial alar region, which is the wing region of the ilium. So there's the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus. So the proximal attachments are all to this external surface of the alar of the ilium, and their distal insertions center around the greater trochanter of the femur. So if we start with the smallest of the gluteal muscles, so it's called the gluteus minimus. As the name implies, it's minimal. So the minimus is the deepest and most anterior, and where it inserts, or its distal attachment, is on the anterior aspect or the anterior facet of the greater trochanter. And that has implications when you go to look for this tendon on ultrasound. Then overlying it is the gluteus medius. You can see it is sort of originating slightly more posterior, and it's overlying or covering the minimus, and then its insertion, distal attachment, is slightly more posterior, and this is known as the lateral facet of the greater trochanter. So these two muscles are still part of what's known as the superficial layer of the gluteal region. Then finally you have the gluteus maximus. So the maximus obviously is the largest, most powerful of the three, and responsible for extension of the hip, and it's also a lateral rotator of the thigh. So the origin is on the ilium, as well as the sacrum, as you can see down here, and the coccyx. So it originates all along here, and it's a common site to get tender in elderly people. Now the maximus, where it inserts, is partially into this greater trochanter on what's known as the gluteal tuberosity, and also it inserts into the iliotibial tract, which you know is this white fascial band here. Now the gluteus maximus, you will probably know this from exercise, you do use it when you're standing, so if you're walking along and you palpate it, it won't contract that much, but if you go to rise from a sitting position to a standing position, you'll feel it contract. So it's definitely active if you're running upstairs. Now you don't sit on your gluteus maximus. When you sit or flex the hip, it starts to move superiorly, so that what you actually sit on is the ischial tuberosity, covered by a small bursa and some fat. So you don't sit on your gluteus maximus. Now all these muscles, the nerve innervation is all the same, and they all have the same blood supply, but it's not the sciatic nerve, and probably the detail of that is something that's a little too high level for the moment. So the medius and the minimus, these two are medial rotators of the thigh. So because if you have a look at their insertion point, it's quite anterior. So if they contract, they're going to have the effect of rotating the femur anteriorly and medially, as opposed to the maximus. When it contracts, it tends to rotate things laterally. So if you were to clench your butt cheeks, you'll feel that your hips rotate laterally, and that might help you to remember it. And then the deep layer of the gluteal region, we'll have to remove all these again to see the deep layer. So the deep layer are these 5 muscles here. Now if we zoom in a little, starting from most superior, you have the piriformis, and then if we go to the most inferior, we have quadratus femoris. So it's shaped like a square, and it's a strong lateral rotator. So again, clenching your butt cheeks together, if these all act together, it will produce a lateral rotation or external rotation of the hip. Then in the middle, you have an obturator internus, and then either side of it are 2 gemelli muscles, a superior gemelli and an inferior gemelli. Now they sort of form a unit, those 3 together, to produce external rotation when the hip is extended. So when you're standing straight, if these act, they will externally rotate the hip. If you have a hip that's flexed, so in sitting position, they will help abduct the hip. So if you sit down and try and clench your butt again, you'll feel that the hips splay laterally or abduct slightly. Now piriformis is essential to know because it's a landmark for the sciatic nerve. So in some cases, sciatic nerve passes out beneath the piriformis. In some people, they have a variant where the nerve comes out superior to it or even through it. So that'll become relevant in medicine. Also, this quadratus femoris muscle, in the position that ballet dancers perform where they rotate their toes out, a bit like Charlie Chaplin, this muscle would contract and can become compressed between the ischial tuberosity and the greater trochanter, and they call that ischiofemoral impingement, and that becomes relevant when we're looking at MRIs and other imaging tests. So that's the basics of the gluteal region. And now we're going to look at an important region known as the femoral triangle. The femoral triangle is a region beneath your skin which is bounded superiorly by the inguinal ligament, medially by the adductor longus, and laterally by the sartorius, and several important structures run through this triangle. The floor, or the deep portion, is formed by the pectineus muscle and also by the iliopsoas tendon. And then you can see on top of that runs the femoral vein, artery, and nerve. So from medial to lateral, if you remember the word van, as in a van like a car, vein, femoral artery, femoral nerve. And they're the important structures that you'll come to identify on ultrasound.